Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory. You're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, which is a group of writers from Vancouver who like to have fun with narrative. What we're going to do tonight is just, have fun with words, really. I'll sort of explain it more later once I get through a little bit of the intro. Hello, GS. But I guess if you are new here and you're watching this not live, if you're watching this recorded later, you should know that down in the description below, there are timestamps. So you can skip ahead to places you want to be in major things that happen over the next about 40 minutes to an hour that this show runs. So the concept, as you saw in the title today, is we are taking some famous old love poems and we are going to try and ruin them by turning them into corporate speak. As a person who worked in corporate settings, which I'll talk about in a little bit, the way people talk there can be so odd and wordy while being lifeless. And there's something about the contrast between this really sort of foul overuse of language to no particular end that is corporate emails, and the contrast to poetry, which is by its nature a very restrained form that every word has weight and meaning and is chosen very specifically, I think is going to be funny. And if it's not, then at least we hung out and had some fun together. And that's kind of really the main point. I see there's already some action in the chat. GS says good evening, and Big Drew says, Big Drew in the house! Did I say that right? Is that the inflection intended? I could do a couple of other takes. I could roll it back, do another one. GS says, happy to see Big Drew, and Big Drew says, I've been compared to a summer's eve, but that's a different thing. I'm assuming there's a punchline there. And I'm too dumb to get it. Big Drew says, hi, GS. Hi, Rory. Well, it's very good to see you guys in the chat. I don't know. Have you guys ever worked in an office? And if you have, was it around the time when people were sending out, like, exhausting memos and things that are just overworded? Okay, well, I mean, there's no reason for me to wait around. Sometimes we do Left on Red, where I make book recommendations, but I actually don't have one this week. Or show recommendations. I also don't really have one this week. Although I guess... here's like a really quick, like, half recommendation. Left on Red micro version. I don't know if I can wholeheartedly endorse the whole thing. I did enjoy it enough, but Moon Knight, the show on Disney Plus, Moon Knight was kind of standard Marvel fare, which I really like Marvel. It's one of my soft spots, my sort of junk food. And I think some of it is pretty good. But Moon Knight, in its second to last episode, it's only 6 episodes long, it kind of meanders, and then this 5th episode hits like a gut punch. The backstory is incredibly intense and motivating and interesting, and I feel like nothing in this series really measures up to it. But it's really coolly told as well. Although I will say that I was talking to Felix about this, and he hated all of it, so you might not like it either. But there you go. There's my really brief Left on Red. You can judge me accordingly. It wasn't a book. I'm not a real artist. Blah, blah, blah. Which means that it's time for us to get to Litgames. Litgames are literature games, and it's where we play around with literature. Sometimes that's in a more like competitive way if I have a couple of people on here, which I sometimes do. Sometimes it's me versus the chat, or me with the chat is more commonly the case. This week, what it is more us just playing around and being silly. And that is, we are going to take... famous poems like Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer Day, or How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways. And, I imagine we won't get through too many, but we're just going to try and take some of the major themes, ideas, or lines in it and retranslate them so that it's like some corporate memo or email. Just because I think the contrast between those two things, something so specifically worded for passion and a message of emotion, being translated into something so specifically overworded to obfuscate its whole meaning into a million different fractured pieces the way that corporate does, I think is an interesting contrast. I just want to see how we can ruin things by just changing the words and not the message. But that's what we're doing. We're changing love poems into corporate language. So we'll look at a love poem and then we'll spend some time writing it out with recommendations from the chat. So, whoops. Don't start with me. And we'll see. I'm also taking bets from chat what tonight's tech problem is going to be, because for the last week we've had the most random and irritating tech problems on every stream. So get your votes in. If you win, you know, we'll look at the odds and maybe give you some cash. I'm not going to give you cash. I don't have cash to give. Big Drew says, hi, unnamed interloper. That was perfect, Rory. I wasn't sure what was perfect. You'll have to let me know. Because of the delay on that. Yes, terribly unpoetic emails. Yes. And Summer's Eve is a feminine hygiene product. I see. I get it. Oh, obfuscate. Yeah. It's a tough one to say, though. I always screw it up first run. No matter how many times, how many years I've been using that word. GS says I vote screen freeze. I actually had a small heart attack there that my screen froze when I read that, because I didn't read the whole sentence. Okay. So, our first poem. Let's start with the one in the namesake here. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day, which is a Shakespeare poem. If you didn't know, it's a sonnet. Sonnet is a very specific format, especially Shakespearean sonnets. There's also a few other sonnet forms like Petrarch sonnet and stuff. And if you ever hear anything like that, where somebody says like poetry is of a particular form, a sonnet, a haiku, or whatever else, it can be anything from the themes it deals with. So like sonnets are often associated to love. I wouldn't say exclusively. And once they became associated, then artists started using that association to sort of undermine your expectations with a sonnet. The other, like a haiku is not just 575, as people say. There are non-575 haikus out there. It's not just that. It's also things like, that it talks about nature and whatever else is a part of forms. So they're a lot more ill-defined than that, but for the most part, when you talk about Western poetry, like sonnets and stuff like that, what you're really talking about is it has this many lines, the lines go this way, this is the rhyme pattern it takes. Whether it's A, B, A, B, A, which means every second line rhymes, whether it's N rhymes, whether it's slant rhymes, whether it's the rhymes internal to the different stanzas of it, there's lots of little things that go into defining forms of poems, which is to say, it's a way of, if you know this word, it's a taxonomic exercise by literature studiers, people who study literature. And it doesn't really matter that you know it. It doesn't matter that you know this is a sonnet. I just wanted to say that because I've seen that a lot. Big Drew says, I vote the volume goes wonky in the background music and we can't hear Rory for half the show. Yeah, we had not last Tuesday, but the Tuesday before, after the show, something about the processor in YouTube made the audio buzz. Which is Tuesday's show is just me reading, so the quality of the audio is the whole show. So let's read Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? And what I want everybody to be thinking of is how we can ruin this with corporate language. And if you're completely lost on what I mean by that, I will sort of take the lead and do some of it for you. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? I have to say this in my old school. I did some acting in high school and stuff. And I did do Shakespeare. And you are encouraged to adopt this really pretentious, over-enunciated way. So see if I can remember what is 20 years ago. shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every day from fair some time declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of thy fair, that fair thou oust. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. There you go. Okay, so, like, what's the poem about? It's not really, strictly speaking, a love poem, but I don't care about that right now. I think you can piece it apart in the many essays that have been written about it, about what concepts of love he has and so on. You can go and pursue that on your own. The first thing that stands out for me is this very famous line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate." And in the advertisement for this, if you guys missed it, on like Twitter and Instagram, where you can follow us at varietal_lit, I began the email, that version of this, the following way. I'll just sort of cut and paste it in. GS says, "Bravo." Yes, I know. Beautiful, right? Dear partners and employees. So I had this guy, oh yeah, that's right. I had this guy, I used to work as a consultant for safety, and that meant I wrote safety manuals for people. And I had this guy who had no background in safety, in a national company. So they had places in many of our provinces across the country. And he had this lovely partner that he worked with, a young lady just out of school who also had, I think it was like environmental testing or something. She had no background as well in safety. And that was their whole safety department for the entire nation of Canada, was these two people, neither of which had done safety. And I think they'd sort of seen it as like, this will be a managerial thing. And this guy, perfectly nice guy, but my God, the things he would say things like, let me socialize that around, see if I can get some bite on it, maybe bark it up the ladder a bit. Like nothing wasn't a euphemism or a turn of phrase or some reference or shortening of something. So if you were like, hey, I was thinking that we could, enlarge the font so people could see it more. Let me socialize that up the ladder a bit, and I'll see what kind of feedback we get. I'll sort of structure that down into maybe a few other options for you that you can run through a couple of price outlines, maybe some quote. You'd be like, my God, man, just say I'll check and I'll get back to you, right? So the punchline, there's a punchline to this. This isn't just me complaining. Punchline is, at one point we were sort of just chatting on the phone. He was talking a lot in this way. And I remember at one point, he had mentioned a while back that he had no safety experience. And I said, I'm just curious, like, what was your experience? And he was like, well, I worked in some corporate jobs and whatever else. I was like, okay, well, what did you go to school for? I'm going to give chat like 1 minute to guess what this guy got a degree in, because it's funny. I want to see if anyone can guess it. What that man's degree was in. And while chat guesses what that man's degree was in, I'm going to read the beginning of our email, which is our email version of Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer Day? Dear partners and employees, as we complete our seasonal self-analysis cards, I suspect all employees should find this summer season holds at least some similarities to them, and that's good. There will be cake in the break room to celebrate. However, I think it would be remiss not to highlight that many members of our family here actually exceed in several ways the capacity to reflect these seasonal changes. So the line I'm referencing there is, "Thou art more lovely and more temperate." Big Drew says the poem is about the importance of cover sheets on TPS reports. Did you get the memo about TPS reports? Big Drew says, I had a boss ask me to get him a screwdriver. I asked what kind. He said it didn't matter. I brought him a variety. He asked if I knew what a screwdriver was and came back with pliers. No. Big Drew, you're making that up. What? No way does somebody get through life and not know that pliers are not screwdrivers. Big Drew, I want names, phone numbers. We're going to on stream call them and ask them to define a screwdriver. No, I believe you. I'm just kidding. In hindsight, maybe he wanted a cocktail. So the, because I'm sure a minute will have passed by the time this loops around. The guy, I asked him what his degree was in. His degree was in communications. The man had a degree in communications, and that's how he talked. I have read some of the most obscure and bizarre books when I was in university, like God, what is it called? The Phenomenology of the Spirit? That's what it's called, by Hegel. Which is, by the way, one of the hardest things I've ever had to read. I've read Derrida, who's famous for that. I've been in a corporate position for like a decade at that point, and I've been writing these kinds of emails and dealing with this kind of stuff. And I never knew what this guy was saying, and that his degree was communications. I mean, if anyone needed it. Okay. Let's look at this line again. It's, rough wings do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Okay, well, it's saying that the summer still has some bad weather, and it's short. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines. In other words, the sun gets too hot, and often is his gold complexion. By the way, there's something you would only see in an English poem. Sometimes the sun's too warm. And often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair, in other words, there's clouds over it, again, because he's from England, and every fair from fair creature declines by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. So what he's saying there is, like, summer's got flaws, but your essence doesn't. So how do we capture that in the most boring way possible? However, I think it would be remiss not to highlight that many members of our family here actually exceed in several ways the capacity to reflect these seasonal changes. It's easy to forget that summers can often bring, often but not always. This is a big thing in corporate emails. Like, there's just so much framing about one statement, and it's this anxiety about, like, you know, I don't want to say anything too precise, because most of what business is, if you guys have never worked on like a managerial level in business, is gambling and guessing. and doing it with enough confidence that you know, you can get people through to do it, but you really have no idea. And people tell you otherwise, and they say they have calculations and whatever else. I've seen the calculations. They don't know what's going on. It's gambling. And as a result, you're always trying to put yourself in a position where, you know, you can kind of exude confidence, but also, I said not always. You know, there's always like building in these back doors into their language. Big Drew says his name was Joe. I'm not going to give his last name. He was born into wealth and privilege, and he was given a car wash chain when he was a young man. Is it possible that wealth will make you that inept? Okay, it's easy to forget that summers can often, but not always, bring with it winds, reportedly more in May. More in May. What else was it? Winds, reportedly more in May. And uncomfortable warmth. Plus a few rainy days. GS says he never had to use a screwdriver. Well, of course he did. He just never had to do it himself. Which I guess is probably your point, but I'm making a bigger point here. Everybody needs to use a screwdriver. Everyone needs to cook, right? Just some people can pay other people to do it. Keep you dumb. This is Rory's, like, really weak class hot takes. I'm going to raise class consciousness through really menial and pointless little snipes at some guy I never met. I should put that on the channel header, actually. Menial snipes to increase class consciousness. Okay, so it's easy to forget that summers can often, but not always, bring with it winds, reportedly more in May, and an uncomfortable warmth plus a few rainy days. And then, but thy internal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou oust. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growst. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives his life to thee. He's saying something more complex there, but I'm gonna say that oh, GS says, stick in a deadline, because it mentions summer is short. Corporate loves deadlines. Summer also holds to short deadlines, rarely more than a month or 2 months, more than 2 months, or as in the case of the previous fiscal year, as much as 3 if the weather was taken to be the key measure of its length as a season. These are not traits we would associate with our best family of employees here. They are here through to late hours. Do not behave, or behave's the wrong word. Do not, they don't say not, do they? Behave with greater respect of the general needs of people than the sunny months. And, indeed, often decline Gia says, haha, this is making me laugh so hard, family of employees. And indeed often decline to adhere to the needs of time or other pressures. I think that rather famous ending line we could do something more direct with. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. I wish the default was just to not use the formatting. Well, apparently I can't paste without the formatting, whatever. As our company motto says, with passion and family, we can see a new quarter and give profits to thee. Sincerely, the desk of the president. Yeah, GS says they always stress team or family, which you never feel a part of. And then you're made to feel like you're the problem if you were like, I don't really feel that way. I feel like this. It's always weird to me how many people really bite into it, though. Like, obviously, that's why they do it. It works. They'll be like, I am family. I will do unpaid overtime. I'm like, no. They're just like, as soon as it's not profitable, you'll be kicked out. Okay. I'll read it at the end. Okay, so the next poem I wanted to do was How Do I Love Thee? I'm just fixing the problem here. And I guess I should tag this one as well. It's doing that thing where it breaks over one page. Okay, fixed. Okay, so that means I gotta read you How Do I Love Thee? Which I think you've probably heard in both of these cases. You've probably heard the opening lines. I think on the whole, it's probably true, though, that people also have not heard the rest of the poem. So this, we're on a different page here. This is from Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Well, I mean, she's a great poet. I don't know if I need to say more than that. How do I love thee? Let me. You know what I should do? I should do, if you ever have a chance to hear it, Yeats, W.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats, reading his own poems, specifically Lake of Innisfree. It's a famous recording. His own poem. He adopts this way of reading poems that was pretty standard as far as I can tell, up until like the beats normalized speaking like not really bizarre when you did it. And I'm going to do my best imitation of Yeats's voice when he is reading Lake of Innisfree, because it is so strange to me. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and the breadth and height my soul can reach. when feeling out of sight, for ends of being and idle grace, I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need. By sun and candlelight, I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from phrase. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I'm going to play it after and you're going to be like, I thought you were exaggerating and you're not. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall love thee better after death. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward. It is very much just about love. Apparently, she was a bit of a fangirl in general. But now I feel compelled to defend myself so it doesn't sound like I'm a weirdo. I mean, it's still going to sound like I'm a weirdo. To see if I can play you just for a second. I won't play you the whole thing, but Yeats reading Innisfree. Okay. Buckle up. Well, it's only a minute long. Why not?
I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made. 19 rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings.
I mean, obviously he's more musical because he's
all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core.
I've also heard that this is just the weird way that Yeats read, and that he had like a philosophy around reading that way. And I mean, it's his own way. He's still got a neat voice, but it is obviously not the way a person reads Litgames is free in their head. GS says he sounds like the Marley in A Christmas Carol. Lots of rolled R's. Yeah, I can't roll my R's. That was one thing that was missing from it. Big Drew says, is there a musical iteration of How Do I Love Thee? I feel it carries a similar sentiment to How Deep Is the Ocean by Billie Holiday. I mean, it's possible. It's a pretty famous poem. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did their own versions of it. Okay, so the opening line then, going back to me ruining things, the opening line is, how do I love thee, let me count the ways, and I think I already know what I want my opening line to be here. Dear team, why is it still doing this text? Whatever, this text is fine. It's readable. Dear team, our annual audit of affections and interests in the company, as we are, of course, coming up on the fiscal year end. Has a bit of an issue with too many proposed categories or axioms of assessment in the overall audit. Big Drew says, "Dear team." The amount of times I've been told I was part of a team and then was alone when the work started. GS says, "I'd stop reading after the term annual audit," and you'd be right too. So that's my version so far of How Do I Love Thee? Let me count the ways. I guess I haven't quite established there. Nevertheless, it bears on all of us to share the workload as much as possible as the audit must be completed, and we believe can be done with the efforts of the full team. To be clear, we are making this audit of affection approaches and methods in A3 priority for all mid-level and second to mid-level employees in most departments, save for the ones that have already received memos to the contrary. GS says, "I think we need to do a wellness check on Holly's house." I hope not. They're probably just sleeping. Okay, to be clear, we are making this audit of affection approaches and methods an A3 priority for all mid-level and second to mid-level employees in most departments, save for ones that have already received memos to the contrary. Big Drew says, "Dear team, it is I, your revered CEO, Richard Cranium. I wish to bestow on you a list of reasons why you are valuable assets to our family of company." I do like that approach, Big Drew. I do. I wonder if I can sort of backfill it in here. Of course, my prioritization... Hey, there's Holly's house. My prioritization of this task is driven primarily by my wish to adequately but respectfully express how valuable of assets we see our team to be here. Okay, what's the next line down? I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach. Oh, well, that's perfect. I know. We were discussing in a high-level overview a two-factor analysis. A two-factor analysis that includes both some notions of breadth and at least two data points on height before we solidify any details of the audit. Holly's House says, "How Do I Love Thee is the same tune as My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion." Oh, wow. I didn't know that. When feeling out of sight for the ends of being an ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need. What a beautiful line that is. How can I ruin it? By sun and candlelight. Based on some early reports, we do believe that the extent of our affections around the team's work here is probably as relevant in the details as it is in the big picture. Which of course is trying to say I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. Gosh, you don't need us for this, says Holly's House. Of course I do. Big Drew's dropping stuff right now. Dear team, we like you. Go make us more money in different regards, you whip-cracking overlords. I mean, isn't that really it? Like, I think the thing that I liked the most was the bosses that I had, where the perspective was, you know, we all want to have a job, and we want everyone to like eat and have a house, and that's our goal here. Not really your friends. You're not really mine. We just want to keep as many people employed as we can. And like, I always liked that perspective the most, because I felt like of all the things going on, that's the best version of it, right? Like, the best thing you could be doing in a business is just keeping people employed, and fulfilling needs with that job. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I'm gonna kind of leave that one because it's, you know, anything political is not going to be in a corporate email. Actually, you know what I can do? Just had a thought with this. Chad is saying you're good at this. The truth is, it's a scar. It's like PTSD. You know, you read 10,000 emails like this, and it burns itself in you forever. And it's a haunting voice. You know what it reminds me a bit of? Because they also have a bit of a forced way. I was raised religious, and there's a very specific way that youth group pastors talk. And other people have made fun of it, and actually a lot of them kind of miss the mark. You can tell when a person has actually been around youth pastors when they were for many years and when they weren't. It's this weird, forced, because they're dorks, right? Like, nobody cool went to the seminary. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but that's the truth. And so then they're told, like, you go to appeal to kids by being cool, which I actually don't think is the thing. I think that authenticity appeals to kids above all else. But they are told that, obviously, at some point, and they have this really strange way of talking. And so you can just pull it out on a moment's notice just because you were so imbued in it. GS says, like being branded. Big Drew says, I love you as freely. We appreciate your willingness to. Yeah. See, I can see the scars on Big Drew there. I love thee freely. We appreciate the team's willingness to engage on as many levels of the company as they have, though I will reiterate, we cannot address many political concerns that were added to the analysis for comparison. These terms, well, salient, were considered challenging for our board and removed. Holly's House says the creator of The Simpsons went to the seminary, so go off, Rory. I mean, yeah, they did, and I think it shows. It shows in their work, in the way that they articulate the pastor in The Simpsons. Okay. Which isn't to say, by the way, that, like, if you go and learn about any of that, you'll just come back bitter. I think it's more so there is just classes of people you meet that really stick in your mind in that experience, and you can hear them. Okay, so I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I don't know how to translate that. We're running out of time, so I'm going to move down a bit. I love thee with the passion to put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love that I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, the smiles, tears of all my life, and if God choose, I shall love thee better after death. Let's skip to that end line. Then we'll read these back and we'll call it a day. I just wanted to add, as well as your leader here, I don't think of myself as a boss, but as a partner trying to do better, as a partner in a project to bring real value to our customers and honor our own traditions, whatever they may be. By growing and expanding our ability to serve our communities. And I mean that sincerely, even if the company were to need to close, I would still have the fondest memories of what we had done as a team for our community and customers here. Sincerely, the Office of the President. Okay. It's time to read them back. So we'll get it lined up for people who skip ahead to this part. So, our first poem that we did was Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer Day by William Shakespeare. And this is our corporate letter version of that. And if you have the poem with you, you can sort of track along where we've made changes. Dear partners and employees, as we complete our seasonal self-analysis cards, I suspect all employees should find this summer season holds at least some similarities to them, and that's good. There'll be cake in the break room to celebrate. However, I think it would be remiss not to highlight that many members of our family here actually exceed in several ways the capacity to reflect these seasonal changes. It's easy to forget that summers can often, but not always, bring with it winds, reportedly more in May, and uncomfortable warmth, plus a few rainy days. Summer also holds to short deadlines, rarely more than 2 months, or as in the case of the previous fiscal year, as much as 3 if the weather was taken to be the key measure of its length as a season. These are not traits we would associate with our best family of employees. Here, oh, Jesus, I screwed that up. They stay here through to late hours, behave with greater respect of the general needs of people than the sunny months, and indeed often decline to adhere to the needs of time or other pressures. As our company motto says, with passion and family, we can see a new quarter and give profits to thee. Sincerely, the desk of the president. The second one is How Do I Love Thee, if you know that poem. Dear team, our annual audit of affections and interest in the company, as we are, of course, coming up on the fiscal year end, has a bit of an issue with too many proposed categories or axioms of assessment in the overall audit. Nevertheless, it bears on all of us to share the workload as much as possible, as the audit must be completed and we believe can be done with the efforts of the full team. To be clear, we are making this audit of affection approaches and methods an A3 priority for all mid-level and second to mid-level employees in most departments, save for ones that have already received memos to the contrary. Of course, my prioritization of this task is driven primarily by my wish to adequately but respectfully express how valuable of assets we see our team to be here. We were discussing in a high-level overview a two-factor analysis that includes both some notions of breadth and at least 2 data points on height before we solidify any details of the audit. Based on some early reports, we do believe that the extent of our affections around the team's work here is probably as relevant in the details as it is in the big picture. We appreciate the team's willingness to engage on as many levels of the company as they have, though I will reiterate we cannot address many political concerns that were added to the analysis for comparison. These terms, while salient, were considered challenging for our board and removed. I just wanted to add, as well, as your leader here, I don't think of myself as a boss, but as a partner in a project to bring real value to our customers and honor our own traditions, whatever they may be, by growing and expanding our ability to serve our communities. And I mean that sincerely. Even if the company were to need to close, I would still have the fondest memories of what we had done as a team for our community and customers here. Sincerely, the Office of the President. GS says, put this on Twitter, Rory. I don't know. Do I want to be known as the person who destroyed poems? Big Drew says, fun fact loosely about cake. Marie Antoinette never actually said, let them eat cake. I heard she said, oh my god, they're cutting my head off. My screen froze, says GS. I win the bet. Oh dear. Okay, well, but as long as it's contained to one end, we should be okay. Well, that was me just having fun destroying really classic, beautiful poems that you should all read and respect more than I have. For those of you who came and hung around and talked to me today, I really appreciate it. And those who just hung around the background and watched the video, I also really appreciate you guys coming along. I had a ton of fun with this. If you enjoyed this, share it around with your friends or whatever, and give us a like. I know, it's gross. It's a call to action. It's that gross YouTube algorithm stuff, but give us a like and subscribe if you haven't, because that's how YouTube, that's the gamble that YouTube, that's the threat that YouTube has. They go, we'll show your video around if you can get people to click stuff, because that's what they want. Big Drew says, the group receiving the second memo. Sweet Lord, did he say we're shutting down? Yeah, I did consider that. Oh, Just Fleece It Out. Hey. Says, thank you, Rory. It's good to see you again, Just Fleece It Out. For everybody else, thank you so much for coming by. It's been such a pleasure to have you guys around here, and I've had a great night playing around with you. If anybody else wants to do this again, you let me know in the chat, and we can do it with anything, really. Corporate speak is super easy to spit out. Nonetheless, thank you for coming by my shop, but I gotta cash out. So you can go where you want, but you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.